I don't think about Americans' financial situation. I don't think about anybody. I think about one thing. We cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. That's all.
Sometime in the month of May that you're going to end up with Europe hitting tank bottoms, and in the U.S. it's somewhere in that July 4th time period.
And according to state health officials, she's one of just 6 people to be diagnosed with Hantavirus.
Most people are still approaching the headlines today as one big thing that will just work itself out. They're not. Fuel pressure is building, food stress is forming upstream, Hantavirus is back in the headlines, and extreme heat is stacking on top of systems that were already under strain. I'm releasing this video 50 days before the 4th of July, and that matters because at this rate, that holiday may look very different from what most of us are expecting. Gas, groceries, travel, and basic household costs may all get squeezed at the same time, and that deserves a much deeper look than it's getting right now in the media. Before I get into the stories, I need to say this as clearly as I can. Please hear me out. I think this is one of those moments where it makes sense to speak a little more directly than usual. There are seasons where life, it just feels tighter, and I think we are in one of those right now. You feel it at the pump, the store, and the monthly bills, and the quiet calculations you start making without even saying them out loud. One trip gets skipped, one purchase gets delayed, one more thing gets pushed into next month. A lot of families are already living in that space, and the public conversation still feels like it's just treating this as just another overseas conflict with the usual mix of headlines, political theater, and vague reassurance that somehow it's all going to settle down. And I don't think that is the right read. What we're seeing right now, it feels different to me. It does not feel like one of those temporary disruptions that clears up and lets everything settle back down. It feels like several systems are starting to strain at the same time. And I think there's a real chance this will become more severe than what most people are really prepared for. The physical consequences may outlast the headline cycle by a wide margin. And the households that understand that early, they're going to be in a much better position than the ones still waiting for one obvious sign. And that's why I want to take a closer look at this today, because once it becomes obvious to everyone, the room to prepare usually shrinks fast. Energy crisis. Obviously, we've been covering this energy crisis issue for weeks on the channel, but what makes this different this week is not just about rising oil prices. It's that the system underneath those prices already appears to be running with less margin than most people realize. Analysts are drawing a distinction between a deficit and a shortage, and that difference matters. A deficit means demand is outpacing supply and inventories are being pulled down. A shortage comes later when inventories and strategic reserves fall far enough that the remaining cushion begins to just disappear. And that is why some analysts are now pointing to Europe running into real tank bottom pressure in May, while the United States may be moving toward a much more uncomfortable period around July 4th, if not sooner. Now, that does not mean that I'm giving you some magic date when everything falls apart. It means that the timeline is getting short enough and the summer demand window is close enough that people should start taking this more seriously now. Think of the system like a rubber band. It's stretch. Then there's tight supply and heightened geopolitical risk. And that rubber band snapping isn't necessarily imminent. Even if it does it, price volatility, it's still guaranteed. Systematic breakdown by July is only guaranteed if we have a major escalation, but the tension in the band remains and makes that possible. And this did not come out of nowhere. A war started. Shipping through one of the most important energy choke points in the world has suddenly been put at risk. Insurance has tightened. Tankers have stopped moving normally. Inventory started getting drawn faster. Analysts began warning that Europe could run into tank bottom pressure in May, and that the United States could be moving into a much more uncomfortable window around the 4th of July period, if not sooner. Now, that does not mean that I'm giving you a magic date when everything suddenly breaks. It means that the chain reaction is already underway and more people are starting to recognize where it may be headed. Analysts are just trying to pin a date on what might be inevitable. And if your budget already feels tight right now, there's a very real chance this summer puts a ton more pressure on it. That timeline is not meaningful because of the holiday itself. It's meaningful because of what July 4th represents in real life. There's road trips, flights, family travel, cookouts, propane, gasoline, diesel, beef on barbecues, groceries. Everything that already feels expensive gets put under more pressure at the same time. And if this trajectory holds, that holiday may become one of the first real windows when many households start feeling how tight the system has become. And what worries me personally most is that even a cooling off in the conflict would not mean things are just going to snap back to normal. This is not how physical systems work. Even if the shooting were to slow down tomorrow or even stop, you would still need confidence that the passage is clear, insurers are willing to cover ships again, tankers back in the right place, production restarted, and any hidden damage assessed. And that's not a 1-week recovery. That's not even a 1-month recovery. That is a much longer process, and the inventories can keep drawing through all of it. So, when a lot of people hear a ceasefire headline and assume that means relief is on the way, I think they're really confusing the media cycle with the recovery cycle. Those are not the same thing. The other thing we're saying plainly is that this does not stay at the gas station. It moves. Diesel matters as much as gasoline here, maybe even more. Diesel, it moves through food, it runs tractors, it runs everything from pumps to feeders for agricultural systems. Diesel powers shipping, transport, deliveries, and freight. And jet fuel matters for summer travel and the broader cost structure. Also, liquefied petroleum gas matters for cooking fuel in huge parts of the world and for industrial uses. And these are not fringe categories. They are the working fluids of modern life. And when inventories are already below comfortable levels and the system is still drawing, when other nations are drawn down on their reserves and they're putting pressure on global commodities and trade, the problem, it's not abstract anymore. It's right here at the household level. And it's just a question of how much cushion is left before ordinary people really start feeling it. And that's why I think the public conversation is still really too stuck on the wrong argument. Too many people are trying to reduce this to partisan blame or one governor or one tax structure or one administration talking point. Governments, they can absolutely make bad situations worse, but the deeper mechanism is simpler than that. When supply lines are disrupted, when replacement barrels cost more, when shipping gets riskier, when insurance becomes a choke point, and when refining capacity is already tighter than people realize, prices, what do? They rise. And that is not ideology. That is how constrained systems behave. It's proven through 1,000 different economic models and equations. And this is not just pushing on oil. It is pushing on fertilizer too. And that may matter even more by the time we get into late summer and fall. I'm going to break that down in a separate video here on the channel, which I'll probably release sometime next week, because fertilizer and drought together, they all tell a much bigger food story than most people see right now. So if you're not subscribed yet, make sure you are, because that is something that you need to understand if you want to stay ahead of this emerging crisis. But the larger point is that most people still seem to believe this kind of pressure has to announce itself with just one dramatic, giant breaking point. And that's usually not how it works. What it does is it builds in layers. First, inventories draw. Then replacement costs rise. Then fuel gets more expensive. Then diesel feeds into deliveries and groceries. Then summer demand adds another layer. Then households start cutting back without ever using the word crisis out loud. And that's usually how it moves. If you're already seeing higher fuel costs, tighter grocery margins, or more pressure around routine expenses where you live, leave that in the comments below. I think people need to hear from each other on what they're experiencing. Before continuing, I do want to mention today's sponsor, Upside, because it actually ties a lot into what we're seeing right now. Gas, groceries, even just topping off at the store, none of it's getting cheaper right now. And with gas prices climbing again, it adds up faster over time. So lately, I've been using the free Upside app, and honestly, it's just become part of my routine whenever I'm out running errands. Before I even pull into a gas station, I open the app, check for offers nearby, and claim one. Then I just pay with my card as I normally would, follow the steps in the app, and earn real cash back on that purchase. I actually used it right here, filled up, went inside, grabbed a few things, and it's nice getting money back on things you're already going to buy anyway. And it's not just gas. You can earn cash back on groceries and dining as well, with over 100,000 locations across the country. So it's easy to find offers nearby. It's real cash back, not points or credits, and you can transfer it straight to your bank account or cash out when you're ready. Upside has already given back over $1 billion to users. To find out how much you can earn, download the free Upside app and use promo code CITYPREPPING to get an extra 25 cents back for every gallon on your first tank of gas. What does this mean to us? This means it is a good time to stop treating fuel as just another fluctuating expense and start treating it as a system that may stay under pressure for a lot longer. And that's not going to be alleviated by a suspension of a few cents per gallon gas tax. It could see levels that we've never seen before. If we're entering a credible 50-day window where summer demand collides with tighter inventories, then the practical question is not whether the market owes us relief. The practical question is how exposed your household is if this gets more expensive through Memorial Day, through June, and into July. That means topping off the basics before another jump. It means tightening unnecessary driving where you can. It means looking at fuel, not just for the car, but as a hidden cost embedded in groceries, deliveries, utilities, and household logistics. It means thinking ahead about propane, generator fuel, and the things you wish you will have already squared away if prices continuing jumping another notch at the wrong time. The households that do the least panicking later are usually the households that quietly built a little more margin earlier. If rising fuel costs, grocery prices, or tighter household margins are already changing your plans for the 4th of July, leave that in the comments below. I think people should hear what this is looking like on the ground. And if you're already feeling that squeeze in your own budget, this next part is worth knowing about. Hantavirus. There's another story getting attention right now that I think deserves a little different tone than what some people are giving it. Hantavirus is real. It's serious. It's worth understanding. But how concerned should you be about it? It's also not the kind of story that benefits from hype, because when people start using the wrong frame for a health story, they usually end up either overreacting or ignoring the parts that actually matter. So let's keep this simple. Hantavirus, it's not COVID. It's not highly transmissible, everyday casual contact type threat. In the United States, the biggest risk has historically come from exposure to infected rodent urine, droppings, or saliva, especially in enclosed or dusty spaces. And with this one, you kind of need to be in very close proximity to an infected person and in contact with their fluids to really catch it. The concern right now is higher because of the recent reporting around the cruise ship cluster involving the Andes strain, which has raised questions about closer contact transmission and incubation timing. That does deserve attention. It does not deserve panic. The uncomfortable part of this story, though, at least for me, is that the hantavirus can have an incubation period of up to 8 weeks. That means a person could have the virus and be spreading it to others they're in close contact with for a long time before it actually shows outward signs. And depending on the strain and the circumstances, symptoms may not show up immediately. And that is one reason health authorities, they pay attention to clusters. It makes tracing harder, and it means people can go from feeling fine to feeling very sick on a delay. But the harder truth is that the difficulty of transmission still matters. This is not a story where every headline should be treated like the start of a global airborne event. And that's not what the evidence says right now. What it does say is that it is a good reminder of how households still do not have even a basic medical or sanitation plan. A great deal of preparedness in this area is not complicated. Rodent proofing, safe cleaning practices, gloves, masks, disinfectants, knowing not to sweep dry droppings into the air, knowing how to isolate a sick family member if something unfamiliar starts moving through the house, air and UV light sanitation, keeping a thermometer, electrolyte support, fever reducers, and basic supplies on hand. And these are not dramatic steps. They're just the kind of ordinary competence people wish they had already thought of when the wrong situation shows up. We have an entire course on this in our city prepping community for a reason. It is because we need to understand the basics of these types of diseases and what we can do about them. This is one of those situations where getting the skill right matters. It is serious. It deserves attention, but it also needs to be understood for what it is, not inflated into something that it's not. We were ahead of COVID on this channel because we paid attention early, not because we turned every health headline into a spectacle. The same thing applies here. This is something to be aware of. It's something that we're going to continue to watch, but this is something to prepare around. This is not something I would inflate beyond what the evidence supports. If you have updated your medical kit, rodent proofing plan, or sanitation supplies recently, share that below. I think it helps to hear what practical moves people are actually making. What does this mean to us? It means the right response is calm readiness. Take a look at your medical kit. Make sure that you have masks, gloves, disinfectant, fever support, hydration support, and a plan for cleaning contaminated spaces safely. If you have sheds, barns, crawl spaces, garages, cabins, or outbuildings, this is a good time to think about rodent prevention and cleanup practices. A quieter health story still matters if it catches you unprepared. And one of the easiest ways to stay level-headed during a health advisory is to have enough basic capability at home that you do not have to improvise everything under stress. Heat stacking. The third story is not just about a hot summer. People have a way of hearing summer heat forecasts and they shrug them off because heat is familiar. It was hot when we were kids. It was hot last year. It was hot every summer. But that way of looking at it really misses a real issue. The concern is not just heat by itself. The concern is heat landing on top of a warmer ocean baseline tighter food systems, and a power grid that is already carrying more load than it used to. The underlying systems haven't changed in structure that much, but the heat has been building, the population growing, the electrical demand skyrocketing, and the water reserves are being drawn down, just as populations demand and require more. That is what I mean by temperature stacking or heat stacking. The world is not starting from the same baseline that it used to. Ocean temperatures have been running warmer. Background heat has been running warmer. That means when a seasonal pattern like El Nino or a strong summer heat starts pushing temperatures higher, it is not building on the same foundation people remember from decades ago. It's stacking on top of a system that is already warmer and in many places already less forgiving. That matters for food because crops, they do not care about political arguments, discussions, debates, or opinions about climate. But what they care about is soil moisture, heat during critical windows, irrigation capacity, and how much stress they can tolerate before yields begin to slip. It matters for the grid because higher temperatures mean greater cooling demand in places already carrying more load, especially where data centers, electrification, and population growth are pushing the system harder. It matters for water because dry, hot stretches affect both agricultural and households simultaneously. And it matters for wildfire risk, hurricane and storm intensities, labor strain, and the broader cost of keeping normal life moving through the hottest part of the year. This is where one familiar sentence misses the point. It was hot when I was growing up. Yes, it was, but that does not mean that the baseline is the same. A heat event today can start from a warmer ocean, a warmer atmosphere, tighter power margins, drier ground, and a more strained food system. Each of these is elevated right now, and that's more combined pressure on the system than we've ever seen before. That is what people need to understand. The problem is not just one hot day or even a heat dome that lingers for a week before any relief. It is what repeated heat does when it lands on systems that already have less room for error. And that is why this belongs in the same video with food and fuel. When heat stacks on a thinner grid and a stressed food system, the consequences overlap. Refrigeration matters, cooling matters more, water matters more, the grocery bill gets more exposed, power reliability matters more. A family can fill all that without ever experiencing one dramatic black sky event. And sometimes it's not just a harder summer, more expensive bill, more outage risk, and one more reminder that basic systems are not as forgiving as they used to be. If you already know the weak point in your house during a heat wave or outage, leave that in the comments below. Many people learn a lot from each other when the answers are practical. How are you going to prepare for this summer? What does this mean to us? This means that it's a good time to think about your summer plan before summer forces the issue for you. That means water, cooling, fridge and freezer management, lighting, charging, medical devices, basic outage capability. It means asking which one of those becomes a real problem first at your house and doing something about that now. You don't need to solve every summer risk at once. You just need to identify where the heat will expose you first and build one more layer of margin before that season gets harder. Giveaway. This week's giveaway prize is an emergency car toolkit. All you have to do to participate in the giveaway is just simply comment on the video, give it a thumbs up, and complete the form linked in the description section below. Completing the form is required so we can randomly select and contact a winner. The information is only accessible to our team here at City Prepping. So congrats to last week's winner of the 25-year shelf life stable flour, Ophelia Binkley Webb. We'll be reaching out to you shortly to get that sent to you. What stands out to me is how normal all this still looks right up until the point that it doesn't. The shelves, they still are stocked. The lights, they're still on. The card may still go through. The trip may still be possible. And that's exactly why so many people miss what's happening until the pressure is already sitting in the middle of their lives. A lot of real disruption, it doesn't begin with the same dramatic collapse. What it begins with is ordinary things start costing more, taking longer, working less reliably, and leaving you with fewer good options than you did 6 months ago. And that's what I think we're watching right now. It's not just one isolated problem, but it's a world where several different systems are all getting less forgiving at the same time. And when that happens, the people who do the best are usually not the smartest or the richest. They're the ones who were willing to see the pressure early, take it seriously, and build a little more margin before everyone else finally realizes it is no longer business as usual. Now, as I wrap this up, I want to leave you with something a little different. One of the dangers of living through a season like this is that people slowly adapt to pressure without realizing how much it's changing them. Again, you start accepting stress as normal. You stop expecting stability. You begin lowering your expectations one small step at a time until survival mode quietly becomes your baseline. And I don't think that's how we're supposed to live. Preparedness is not just about reacting to bad news. It's about refusing to let uncertainty rob your household of peace, stability, and clarity. It's about creating enough margin that your family can still breathe when the world around you starts tightening. That matters more than ever right now because the systems that we depend on, they're becoming less forgiving, and I think a lot of people can still feel that even if they can't fully explain it yet. But here's the encouraging part. You do not have to solve every problem at once. You don't need a bunker, a fortune, or a perfectly optimized homestead overnight. Most real preparedness happens through quiet decisions made consistently over time. One extra layer of food, one less unnecessary expense, one more skill learned, one more weakness addressed before it becomes urgent. And that's how resilience is built. It's slow, it's quiet, it's intentional. Normally at the end of these videos, I also like to share what I've been working on over the past week. This week, I worked with our team to put together a solid how-to video to help you build out a great foundational food storage setup, showing you how to do this on your own pace over the course of a month. I'll be releasing that video hopefully this weekend or early next week. Also, I've got a deeper dive video coming out soon on fertilizer and drought side of this food story because that deserves its own full breakdown. We're also working through some property projects, and we just started sending out the weekly city prepping brief each week. It's a shorter, more useful, simple, and actionable plan delivered to you to help you really convert headline anxiety into solutions that you can actually use today. If you want help staying on top of what really matters, what it likely means, and what practical steps that make the most sense next, check out the city prepping brief through the link below. All right, I want to point you to two videos that you should watch next. The first is my video on how to build a 3-week emergency food supply, because that is one of the clearest ways to get ahead of the kind of pressure that we talked about today. The second is my video on what actually happens when the grid goes down, because that one will help you think through more clearly about what breaks first and how to prepare for it before you're dealing with it in real time. I'll put both on the side of the screen here and in the comments and description section below. If you have any thoughts or feedback, feel free to leave it below, and as always, stay safe out there.